Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. And we're here with Vince, my co-host, and a very special guest. We'll get into that in a minute, but I'm so excited, Vince. We're on our nationwide tour, and we've already covered Texas, California, and now we find ourselves in Washington, D.C. How exciting is that?
No, totally excited. Culminating the month of July, we have Coleman Brooks all the way live from D.C. Prior to leaving Alexandria, I met this great leader, and I'm so excited that everyone is going to have a chance to hear a little bit about who he is and what he's doing. So without further ado, Coleman Brooks, tell us about you.
Great. Enrique, Vince, absolutely thrilled to be here and quite honored. So thank you for having me today. I've kind of been around the block, as you'd say. I joined the Marine Corps right out of college, went to OCS, spent 7 incredible years with the privilege of being able to lead Marines, not only in the States, but in worldwide operations, Iraq, Japan, the Philippines, was also down doing humanitarian operations for Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. So it was just an incredible experience to be able to be a leader of Marines. But I've also had some pretty interesting experience in the civilian sector. I've been in banking, working for Fortune 500 companies. I've rescued nonprofits that were about to go under. I also made the fateful choice to attend law school, worked on Capitol Hill, and finally found my place with Wounded Warrior Project. Some may say I have commitment issues, but you know, I look at it as just having a good range of experience from which to draw in my life and to hopefully continue to have positive impact on those that I serve.
I love the variety of places and things that you've had since service, and a big hoorah from me. I'm a Gator Navy kind of guy, so I love my Marines. I was deployed out there in Iraq with the 24th MEU, so I'm very familiar, and I miss those lunchtime hoorah kills. so yeah. So thank you for being with us, and you know we're starting on this actually nationwide, soon to be worldwide. I'm getting ahead of myself. But the nationwide tour, and we're so excited to hear about the Wounded Warrior Project. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So Wounded Warrior Project, basically since 2003, we've been tireless advocates for our nation's finest, trying to improve the lives of millions of warriors and their families. And we really are. We're transforming the way America's injured veterans are empowered, employed, and engaged in their communities. We have the simple mission of honoring and empowering this generation of veterans, the post 9/11 generation. Our overall vision is to create the most successful and well-adjusted generation of veterans in our nation's history. So it's quite a lofty vision, and we put a lot of hard work into it. And we do that by connecting, serving, and empowering. We connect warriors and their families with each other, with us, with their communities. We serve them through 13 different life-changing and life-saving programs and services, which include mental health and wellness, physical health and wellness, economic empowerment in the form of workforce transition, as well as assisting people with their VA benefits process. And then we also engage veterans through a series of events and activities designed to bring them out, get them together, assess what their needs are, and get them to the programs and services that are going to help them in the long term. And that's kind of where I come in. I am on the engagement side of the house. I'm our Mid-Atlantic Regional Director, so I oversee teams in Germany, D.C., Richmond, and Fayetteville. And we, host close to, 400 different events per year designed to engage and connect veterans. And we also work at the hospitals. We work at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, Walter Reed in D.C., the VA Polytrauma in Richmond, as well as the WTB down at Fort Bragg, and we also do a lot with Camp Lejeune. Our teams see every service member pretty much that is coming out of theater from Iraq, from Middle East, Europe, and Africa, because they all transit through LARMC. So we're also a first point of contact for anybody who's coming out with an injury, illness, or wound. And we're there to not only provide comfort, but to assist them and their families in the most critical of times and get them engaged with us as they begin their warrior journey, their road to recovery. And then we are there for the long term to help them meet that vision of being part of the most well-adjusted generation of veterans in this nation's history.
Well, Coleman, I just got to say, you know, I wear the shirt proudly as alumni, and I brought in Enrique to be part of the alumni as well. So you have a fellow alumni on the call, but truly a first-class organization. And hats off to all the leadership for putting in place what it is we see currently at the WWP and what it's doing to empower and transform our veterans, and also helping out caregivers and spouses. So it's all encompasses the whole family in that sense. So the whole military community.
Yeah.
So very excited also to what exactly is on the forefront and on the horizon for WWP in the future.
Well, I will say, you know, much like everybody else, when March hit and the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, hit this nation, we had to make some pretty serious adjustments, especially on the engagement side of the house, because we were used to doing face-to-face events, you know, thousands per year as an organization throughout all of our programming. And so we had to make the quick transition to the virtual environment. And I'm very proud to say that all of our programs have been able to do that, especially from the mental health side of the house, being able to make that transition, as well as the engagement program, offering virtual events, getting familiar with that technology, and engaging our veterans and their families in a different format, especially at a very sensitive time for everybody, including our employees. So it was definitely a challenge, but I'm proud to say that Wounded Warrior Project made that transition and is continuing to have an incredible impact, and to be able to provide those critical services, especially on the mental health side of the house, because those needs have only increased since the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, hit us. So that transition to virtual programming was a huge success for us. Additionally, you know, we did take the time to conduct an outreach and made over 35,000 different calls to warriors that are registered with us to check on them, see how they were doing, see what their needs were. And the response was, you know, simply unbelievable. You know, a lot more people had a lot of time to be home and would actually pick up the phone. It's kind of, you know, if there is a silver lining to COVID pandemic, more people are willing to engage either virtually or will pick up the phone. And a lot of those connection points really made a difference for people. So those were two things that we had going on in this current environment. But as far as the road ahead, we're looking forward to getting back to face-to-face programming, because as you guys know, Vince, I'm proud to say you were one of our very impactful peer support group leaders when you were up here in Virginia. And you know just as well as I do just how important that face-to-face interaction is for warriors and their families to be able to do that, because that's where connections are made, that's where resources are shared, that's where needs are assessed and things come out that can then be addressed. So we're looking forward to getting back to face-to-face programming, and we're doing that on a limited basis, you know, where it's safe and where we can, you know, make sure that it's impactful and in line with all, you know, obviously CDC and local regulations. So on the horizon, we're looking forward to getting back to face-to-face programming. At the same time, though, we're going to take some of the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the other silver linings is we have an entire generation of veterans now that, and a society as a whole, that has been forced to use technology, has been forced to become comfortable doing stuff virtually. So we've been able to reach people in remote areas that we weren't traditionally able to serve before. So virtual programming is still going to be a part of what we do moving forward, but we are looking forward to getting back to face-to-face events. But as far as on the horizon, two other things I did want to mention is we have our one of our signature events, one of our kind of founding events, was Soldier Ride New York. It began 17 years ago when a Long Island native named Chris Carney rode across the country to raise awareness for injured veterans. And, you know, normally this ride connects warriors and supporters in the Babylon and Hampton communities in New York. But this year, obviously, out of an abundance of caution, due to the pandemic, we've shifted it to being virtual. So participants are going to be asked to ride 25 miles either individually or in a group. Everybody's going to get a T-shirt. People will be supporting injured veterans and their families by registering for this soldier ride at www.soldierride.org/virtual. And some of the funds that are raised from this not only go to the Wounded Warrior Project, but they're also going to go to some community hospitals in Long Island that are supporting the COVID-19 relief efforts. So I encourage everybody, and Vince, I'm pretty sure you're going to be doing this, knowing you're an avid cycler, registering for Soldier Ride New York Virtual. The other thing is we're now in our third year of Carry Forward, which is a 5K delivered by CSX, one of our great partners. And this is going to be virtual as well. People can complete it whenever and wherever they want. You know, participants can walk, run. Many people carry a flag. Some people carry another person. Some people just carry weight, you know, even up to 100 pounds. These all signify the weight servicemen and women have carried as they represent our country. So we highly encourage everybody to register for a virtual 5K coming your way. And, you know, they can certainly do that at www.carryforward.org/virtual. So, you know, we hope that people will register, and those funds that we raise as a result of this all go to, you know, supporting injured women or men and women in our veterans community, because, you know, we are a nonprofit organization. We don't take money from, you know, the government or anywhere else. So, you know, that's what kind of drives us forward is donor support. And we do that to ensure that warriors never have to pay a single cent for any of our programs or services. Everything we do is completely free and funded by the generosity of the American people.
I absolutely love the fact that, you know, and you mentioned several things there. You know, the pivot for the world has been a virtual thing. I'm so happy to hear that you were able to do that for the majority of all your events, because I know how critical they are. I'm definitely going to try to sign up for that race, either one of those, and support, as Vince had mentioned before. He brought me into the knowledge of the WWP, and I myself am an alumni, and so I'll be supporting those initiatives. You mentioned earlier OCS, and it brought me back to my Newport days when I was at the Senior Enlisted Academy and the Cobb CMC course for the Master Chiefs. And I remember seeing everybody running around, you know, trying to make that transition from enlisted to officer, and having that background is definitely one of the cornerstones for leadership at the level that you served. And speaking about leadership and transitioning now into more of a leadership conversation, when you was in service, either on the enlisted side or when you were commanding via the officer side, what professional development areas did you work on to improve your capabilities as a leader?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I tend to reflect back more along my experience in the private sector than I do in the military with respect to professional development. Just because, you know, I think in the military, you just have a very narrow focus on your development. You know, then it's all about the mission, keeping your people safe, making them successful in achieving that mission, and taking care of people. So the development is really about knowing your job, knowing the mission, and knowing what your people's strengths and weaknesses are. But, you know, from a more professional development standpoint, some of the things I've, you know, continued to work on, I think throughout all my, you know, myriad of careers, you know, that come to mind is, number one, I think is direct communication in all its forms. I think communication is one of those words that gets thrown out there that, you know, and it just becomes this catch-all for everything. But do people really know what communication is? And there's so many different forms to it. So direct communication is what I like to call, and it's having those difficult conversations. Nobody, you know, human nature, we like the status quo. We don't like things. We don't like uncertainty. So most people have a hard time with direct communication. in whatever happens, whether it's dealing with, undisciplined employees or having to talk to somebody about a very sensitive subject. But I work on direct communication quite a bit, conflict management, addressing issues, or even, public speaking, so I think, negotiating is another piece of it. So I think working on direct communication and continuing to hone that skill, practice it, and understanding all the different forms of communication is just something that everybody needs to focus on the professional development side of the house, especially as a leader, really understanding all the different ways you are communicating to your people and having, the strength to have those difficult conversations, because that's how people get better. That's how people underneath you are going to be able to improve and develop, is if you can give them the critical feedback that they're going to need or tackle the serious issue that they need you to tackle for them. I would say another thing one thing that's really come to the forefront, and this was not only in the military, but is definitely in the COVID-19 environment for everybody, is you continue to have to get good at your job and understand the technology that's available. The world moves so fast, and in the last 6 months, it's moved even faster. So if you're not continuing to get better at things like understanding how Zoom works or the different platforms in a virtual environment, or understanding the technology of the day, you're stagnating and you're going to be left behind. But you're also doing a disservice to those you are engaging with, because audience engagement, especially in the virtual world, is huge. You're competing against everybody else. So if you don't know the different technology and the platforms, you're not getting better at it, optimizing their usage, what kind of impact can you have if you are not using the tools you have effectively to engage your people? And that not only goes for your audience, but people you're leading as well.
That's great. Adapting to your environment and adapting to what's ahead, because you know what? Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. It's so true there.
Yeah.
And in communication, we talk on our survey a lot about listening. So part of that whole communication platform is listening, which is huge of that. The transition into advice. So what advice did you receive as an emergent leader, either in the military or in the private or corporate section?
Well, one of my mentors in the Marine Corps just recently retired last week, and I always just think back to something he said, and this is not a real specific piece of leadership advice, but it is something that stuck with me from the military. He always just said, smooth is fast. Like, take your time, take a measured approach, go everything smooth, because once you do, it'll go really fast. And that, I think, applies to a lot in a leadership position, whether it's training or working with your teams or trying to get results. Smooth is fast. So take the time to do things right, because once you do, and you do all that great prep work, your team is going to flourish. But one real big thing that has kind of come to the forefront of my mind, and I've been talking to my junior leaders about over the last 6 months during COVID-19, is really what I tell them is, until you care more about another person's development, success, and recognition than your own, then you're not ready to be a leader. You can be a manager all day long, but until you're fully invested in other people's success and their development and what they're doing, you're not ready to be a leader, or you don't want to be a leader, which is fine too. But it's really about caring for more. It's amazing how many people you will see say, oh, I want that position. Like, well, do you know the names of the people you'll be managing, or are you just looking for a title and a pay bump? Like, are you taking the responsibility seriously that you are going to be in charge of somebody's personal and professional life? Like, traditionally, you could just say, these people will be in your professional charge. You're going to be responsible for their development. During COVID-19, much more of a bump, you had to take care of your people on a more emotional and personal level, as a leader, to make sure their work-life balance was good, that they were in a position where they were healthy and could, execute what they needed to execute for the people that they serve. So it really boils down to, if you want to be a leader, you're going to be caring about everybody else more than yourself. And until you're ready to make that commitment, you might want to rethink whether or not you should be assuming a leadership position. I would also say, experience is the best teacher. And, based on what you heard about my background, I have a lot of different experience, and I will say a lot of it has informed me now. And, I feel at this point, I'm operating at a level that I haven't operated at before. And that's because of experiences I've had, both good and bad. Make mistakes, because that's the best learning experience you can possibly have. For people that things are going well all the time and there are no problems, you're not getting anything out of the experience. Leading is about getting people through adversity and, dealing with things and meeting mission regardless. So any mistakes you can make, any experience you can have, go do it. And the last one, big thing that I will say is be competent. Know your job, and know the job of the people underneath you. Like in the military, we often trained, the people below us to say, in case your leaders take one through the running lights, you need to be ready to step in and take their role. But the reverse is also true. As a leader, you need to know what your people are doing. You need to know their jobs as well, because sometimes you're going to have to step in to help them out, or to be a player, a player coach if you lose personnel, for whatever reason. But not only that, if you know their jobs, you're going to have a much better understanding of what they go through. And when you have that understanding, decisions you make, you will have in your head, you're going to be able to go through the second, third, and fourth order of effects of your decision and how that impacts the people below you. And you're going to think about it from their perspectives. And that can really help you in a leadership role, because that is taking care of your team and putting them in a position to be able to be successful in whatever you're pushing down for them to get accomplished.
That's wonderful. You mentioned adversity, and the first thing that came up to my mind was leadership. You're continuously going to face adversity and challenges. That never ceases. Is how you actually press through those moments that actually details for everyone, whether you're the true leader or not. So talking about challenges and adversity, what challenges have you faced in your leadership?
That's a great question. I think I've faced at one point or another every single challenge you could possibly face, from, losing people in the Marine Corps, very unfortunately, to, major disruptions in companies as a result of the economy or other things, employee conflict management, having to let people go. So I've hit about every challenge, I think, at this point. And I hope I won't say that I've hit every challenge, because otherwise I'm not going to be learning from my experience, and you should always be doing that. So, but I will say one of the things that gets in people's way a lot is time and operational tempo. That, you're going so fast all the time that you never feel like you have time to take a step back and do what you need to do to train your team and, to get them on the path where you want them going. You just say, no, this other stuff's too important. So, and it's got to be done now. So you kind of almost internally make excuses, for not taking the time to really, develop your people or implement needed change. So that's always a challenge, both the circumstance itself, but also your reticence, to get over that challenge. But finding ways that you can align what you're doing as a leader with the operational tempo, that's a hard thing to do. But if you recognize it, you can work towards it. And I will say, one of the other challenges, it goes back to direct communication. Like, I could sit here all day long and say I have no problem with conflict management, but I'm a human. I'm always going to have a problem with conflict management. It's not a natural thing. It's what I like to call the next day effect. Like, you'll have leaders and say, if you have a, problem, you should address it. And it sounds easy in theory, but for a lot of people, you have to come to work with that person the next day. So how do you deliver discipline or bad news in a genuine fashion, but then come back the next day and say, hey, glad to have you here. You're on the team. Let's move forward. I call it the next day effect. And that's, I think, what a lot of people fear when they, talk about conflict management. But that's something that is always going to be a challenge, is having those direct conversations. So something we all have to continue to work at, practice, because if you're engaging in that kind of communication with your people, that's how they're going to get better. Nobody gets better with you blowing smoke, all the time and just saying they're great. People need critical feedback. And oftentimes, if delivered the right way, you'll be amazed at the response in terms of how people will turn it around and how much they appreciate it.
Love hearing about the next day effect analogy and strategy, which to me it resonates with empathy, being in their shoes. So a lot of empathetic servant leadership traits I'm hearing you say, and strategies, and dealing with strategies. How either certain strategies you use with your team, or strategies to deal with the change that's occurring in our day in and day out nation and world.
Sure, absolutely. In terms of strategies, it's kind of interesting. You go to just about any group or organization in the world, almost everything's a cliche. You're going to find some of the same issues in every place, and they're going to center around, we need better communication, we need better collaboration, and a lot of people exist in silos. Like, those are some of the most common things that you'll find throughout any organization or any group you're working with in the world. So one of the strategies I've always had with, my teams here at Wounded Warrior Project all centers on connectivity. How can I keep my people connected, working together, so that information is flowing across and up, but not just up to me, then down to other people? How do I organically get them connected so they are working together? They know who to reach out to. Because my teams, we have the honor and privilege of serving people coming out of theater, and a lot of those injured, ill, or wounded are coming to multiple places within our footprint. And so how do we ensure that information is being passed to the right people so that we can support them and their families at the most critical of times, and that we're prepared to provide that constant support? And so part of that is creating that connectivity between our teams, that they are communicating and collaborating in that organic fashion, and that stuff's not being lost. Because, it's really critical. If things really kick off again and we get a real high increase in casualties or another world event, it's going to be critical for our teams to have that collaboration and communication in place to be able to serve those people effectively. And I'd be reticent if I didn't say, you don't see it in the news a lot, but there are still, 170,000 people deployed down range at various locations, and there's still people with battle injuries coming out, including this past weekend. So, everything is still very real, and there's a lot of need out there for teams like ours to support people. So connectivity, I think, is a big piece. And I think the other piece is, Vince, you alluded to it earlier, is like, everything is always going to change. There's going to be constant change. I think the term innovation should be a part of everybody's core values, because you can prep the battlefield for your people and set expectations. So if you let people know, hey, we're always operating in a dynamic environment, we want to focus on innovation, we want to focus on being adaptable and ready for the next thing and to be able to turn on the dime, that sets people's mindsets to being better able to adapt or quickly adapt to change. So a lot of it goes into the prep work. They say it's a ounce of preparation, or I can't remember the phrase, but most people don't deal with change well because they're not expecting it, and it goes against our human nature. So whatever you can do to prep your system, your people, having that as a core value is adaptability and commitment to innovation, which is, changing for positive impact. The more you prepare your people for it, the better they're going to be able to react to situations, whether it's COVID-19 and a huge switch to a virtual environment, or crisis situations. So that would be one of the other strategies, is really preparing your people to kind of live in that dynamic environment.
That's outstanding. I've often say innovate or die, right? That's just one of those two things. Because if you don't pivot, if you don't innovate, if you're not always constantly thinking of a better way, you become stagnant. You spoke about communication and being able to get information out and amongst the team. Well, if someone wanted to reach you, find out more about WWP and all the things that are going on, how would they do that?
Well, that's a great question. We have multiple social media channels. Obviously, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but very simply, www.woundedwarriorproject.org. Has a live chat feature, direct connection to our resource center, but also shows all of our programs and services. If you are a service member who served post 9/11 and incurred an injury, illness, or wound, we highly encourage you to register with us. But that probably the easiest way is to go to our website, because there are a lot of great information there and some direct connection features. They will get you connected with, the teammates where you are, so you can be connected with them in your local community.
Definitely, folks, if you are a veteran that's looking into joining this elite group, please go to woundedwarriorproject.org, WWP. Or if you want to donate your treasure, your time, or your talents, we definitely would love to have you be a part of this wonderful organization helping out as well. Coleman Brooks, has been a pleasure and an honor to be here present with you, not physically, but virtually, as we adapt to the new world. And it's been great to see you after so many years. And for everyone else, as you know, this road show continues. We're very happy that you have joined in and tuned in. If you want to connect with us, reach us at theleadershipvoid@gmail.com. We'll be happy to entertain your questions, your comments, and any ideas that you may have. If you want to be a guest, let us know. Next month, we're going where to, Enrique? What's going on next month?
Well, next month, we're going to have Pernell Bush with us. And he is here from local Orlando area in the Seminole County. And he's the managing partner of Key Consulting Solutions, LLC. We know him from the local area. He's an award-winning veteran. He's doing great things, Marine Corps as well. And so, hoorah. And he's doing great things in the community as far as social working and through his services. So I'm excited to see Pernell on the show. And as Vince had mentioned before, we like to, you see us wearing the shirts. He's got the Wounded Warrior Project shirt. If you have shirts you want to be on the show, if you have things that you want to show off on the show, please send them our way. Reach us at theleadershipvoid@gmail.com, and we will gladly accept those things and wear them for you. But thank you so much, Coleman, for your time, for being with us. What WWP is doing for our community, we, Vince and I, are benefactors of it, right? We are the ones that you guys service, and so we really appreciate the time you've taken to be with us today. On behalf of the Leadership Void and all of our listeners, thank you. I appreciate it.
It was my privilege and honor. Thank you.